how this entire thing started was just because I wanted to have fun, and mainly
Mm.
because I got tired of reading about mage protagonists. Like, I just wanted to see somebody wield a sword and a shield in a lit RPG or like classic warrior. Like, man, where's all the warrior fans at? Toe to toe, looking at your opponent's eyes as they swing an axe at your shield and you shield bash them in the face. I wanted somebody who started off basic, and I just wanted to
Mm.
have fun writing about melee combat.
This is the Crit RPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Crit RPG Podcast, the only podcast where someone just wrote in. Hi Rhoden, how are you doing?
Hey, doing good. What's going on? Glad to be here, Maddox.
Yeah, you are writing a story called, let me just check this because this is going to be a long one, The Stubborn Skillgrinder in a Timeloop, which is a very, very, very Royal Road story name.
Definitely so. Definitely so. I like slapping names on the tin, which are exactly what they describe.
Yeah. So it's a love story.
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely going to be a love for grinding, that's for sure. That's some kind of love.
Lots of grinding in some way. Okay, yeah. No, actually, do tell us about the story. What's it about? How did it come to be? And how are you writing it?
Yeah, so for me, how the Stubborn Skill Grinder started is, I read a lot of time loop stories, and in all of them, it's always this average person or maybe slightly above average person that gets caught into
Mm-hmm.
the time loop. And I thought, hey, what happens if you have the most Leroy Jenkins type of guy who will just charge into everything? And who's just gonna batter his head against a wall until it breaks. What if I took that one guy who would be a footnote in history without a time loop because he'd be the first guy who dies in a battle? And
Mm-hmm.
what if I put that one insane, three screws loose guy into a time loop? What happens if we have this absolute weirdo and we just make him the main character? And hey, that's how the concept for a stubborn skill grinder in a time loop started. I'm just like, hey, let's have a guy who just focuses on numbers go up while the rest of the world is kind of just like looking at him and is like, what's wrong with this dude? Holy cow. Needs to be in a psych ward.
I mean, like, you were right. It is what it says on the tin. It's great.
Yeah, no, I
Awesome.
like to keep it simple like that.
Mhm. So how did you start writing it? I mean,
Uh, oh,
beyond that.
oh boy, yeah, no, it's crazy because I've had the idea in my head for a while. There was
Mm-hmm.
a pilot chapter for a story which I called Time and Repetition, which
Mm-hmm.
is very similar, different world building and everything, but very
Mm-hmm.
similar. But it wasn't lit RPG, and this was
Mm-hmm.
maybe a few years ago that I just had this pilot chapter written out. And I dropped it then, but then I came back to it after. I'm just like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna start writing, and I'm gonna put this out to paper. And about February of this year, I just started writing, and I got about 14 chapters out, which was about 80,000 words. And I'm like, okay, let's post this on Royal Road and Scribble Hub. And before I knew it, like, I go to sleep, I wake up, a whole bunch of follows, and I never posted on Royal Road before. I don't know what the scale of it is because I'm a first time author, but I go back, and before I know it, oh, you crossed 100,000 views. Oh, you have this many followers. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Is that supposed to mean something? And it took another author kind of sitting me down and telling me, hey, that's insane. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh wow, okay, I guess I've started writing now, and I'm on this train. So here we go.
I mean, as I'm looking at it, I don't even know. Do you have a Patreon yet?
Yeah, I do actually. I just don't paywall any content because I feel
Hmm.
not personally. I just don't like to do that. But that's just
Okay.
me.
Yeah, makes sense. So you're never going to put this thing on KU?
Uh, I'm talking to a publisher. That's all I'll say about it. But
Okay.
yeah, no, there's definitely something in there. that's
Okay.
being worked on right now. But
Okay.
as for advanced content on Patreon, I just like to release it as I go onto Royal
Hmm.
Road. So
Makes sense. Nice. Yeah. I mean, you're actually I think one of the first people I've had on here who are like, nah, Patreon, nah. Because like, hmm,
yeah, oh
yeah,
no, no, you're right. Absolutely no to Patreon. I get compensated well enough at work,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. No, that's the point, right? I mean, people who've listened to this podcast before will know, like, I'm also super happy at my job, so the writing kind of like takes like a backseat. But I do wish I had more time to write, and that's my kind of like the point I wanted to go there. Okay. Well, in that case, actually, then we should maybe just hop into the second question right away.
hmm.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer?
Oh boy, that's a question because a lot of people gave me different kinds of advice. Like when I
Mm,
started and I was speaking to other authors, they're like, "Hey, do shorter chapters,
mm,
Patreon things," and I'm like,
mm,
I listened to absolutely none of that advice, and I just decided,
mm,
hey, my chapters are going to be 10,000 words long each,
mm,
and I'm going to release two of those a week. So that's 20,000 words a week of just
mm,
two chapters. And I didn't
mm,
listen to what anybody told me, and for some reason things blew up because I didn't know Royal Road readers enjoy long chapters that much. Because
They do.
yeah, no, it was surprising because there was definitely a portion of people who were with the view that hey, you need shorter chapters,
Mm,
2 to 3K max, Patreon,
mm,
Patreon, Patreon, and I'm just like, no, I don't want a Patreon. I'm good. I just write for fun,
mm,
and here I am. So I would say the best advice I've gotten was just write what you enjoy, and so cliche. I know
mm.
everybody says that, but hey, it worked out. I'm not out here writing about romance fiction. I write about swords clashing against spells, and I write about doing insane things which make people question your mental health. But you know,
That's just being an author. I think that's normal.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
First time to it though, so been a bit of a trip.
So in the end, it's really about doing what you like, especially if you're not doing it for the money. So many people in this space are in it for the money, and there's nothing wrong about that. But I mean, I've said this a lot before. I think like your podcast will be like I'm up 58, 59 or something. And I've been releasing one a week for about a year, or more than a year now. And the basic point is not every hobby has to be a side hustle. You can just enjoy writing. You can just enjoy like interactions with your followers or something, and yeah, stuff like that. It's just cool to write sometimes, and you don't need to always do this for the monies.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree with you.
Mm,
Again, how this entire thing started was just because I wanted to have fun, and mainly
mm.
because I got tired of reading about mage protagonists. Like, I just wanted to see somebody wield a sword and a shield in a lit RPG world, like classic warrior. Like, man, where's all the warrior fans at? Toe to toe, looking at your opponent's eyes as they swing an axe at your shield and you shield bash them in the face. I wanted somebody who started off basic, and I just wanted to
Mm,
have fun writing about melee combat. So,
mm.
which is
Yeah.
utterly basic in a world of fantasy. I know when you have spatiomancy and chronomancy, but hey, I like to keep it simple while
Hey,
still tying those in.
exactly. Nothing wrong about that. It's I prefer like a semi melee range, to be honest.
Hmm.
um, like I don't know, like like not archery, that's too far away,
Hmm.
but not exactly like rogues with daggers either.
Hmm.
And yes, as all the other lit RPG authors, I do like my spell swords, but um, not too much. I like the supportive aspect of it more. But okay,
Hmm.
I mean, I've never really thought about writing real like sword board combat. That could be kind of fun. Could be nice.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. It definitely nice, writing
Mm,
about the visceral aspects of it, and
mhm,
there's just so much that goes into, you know, a toe to toe melee fight,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot that can be said about it, even if it
Mm-hmm.
seems very basic. And I feel it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to pull off sometimes, but very
Oh yeah,
rewarding when it's done.
totally. So your basic advice is still write what you like. So if we're going into like the more like deeper advice, what's one of those?
In terms of deeper advice, that's a good question. I mean, I know one of the things which I was told a lot was,
Mm-hmm.
hey, show, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to do that sometimes when I have 800 loops of death to write about sometimes. So, um, I would say it's important to show the important parts, definitely the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you
Mm-hmm.
want your readers to know. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit I'm guilty of saying, oh, 50 loops passed before he could do this, but it's meant to be that way because I'm not about to write at least 10 paragraphs of 50
Mm.
loops where he makes, maybe 2 millimeters of progress.
Mm. Yeah, that's
So
also fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm the complete opposite. I wrote 243,000 words about one afternoon. So,
I love it.
well,
That's dedication right there.
yeah,
I
I
wish I had
it
that kind of dedication.
it just worked out this way. And like I always joke in the story itself, like it seems like I've been telling myself that for months, but only like a few hours passed. So stuff like that, right? Because on Robo the story's released like over a couple of months, and still the story time is a different beast. But so what would your be advice for me in that case, right? So how do you actually stop going in that much detail?
Um, I like to always tie things back to where the story is supposed to be focused.
Mm,
Like, yes, I could go off on a saga, and I have a whole bunch of world building for the world that the Stubborn Skill Grinder is based in. There's a whole bunch of world building, and I could go off on tangents, but at the end of the day, I look at the story's title and I'm like, hey, the readers came here for what's on the tin, which is
mm,
the Stubborn Skill Grinder in a time loop. So
yeah.
I always like to tie it back to that and keep it focused on that. If I feel
Mm.
more than 5 paragraphs have gone by without some sort of focus on the grinding, then I'm like, I'm doing something wrong.
All the time loop.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I like that dedication to the theme. I it's a new thing. I'm trying to kind of like have that dedication to the theme. We haven't even talked about how long you've been writing for, but I before that I kind of always like went with my gut, but now actually like knowing okay this is the core premise of the story really helps because you can decide okay this doesn't need to be in, that doesn't need to be in, or like I can cut this short. But yeah, how long have you been writing for?
Oh boy, since February of 2024, would you believe it?
No.
I'm not even lying. That's actually the first time. Well, I mean, I did used to write some terrible fan fiction back in the day, but let's not talk about that.
I mean, we can't, like we shouldn't, but um, just saying that that's also writing experience because like many people always think that like writers are just born this way or just like materialize out of thin air, but there's practice. I mean, I wrote like years of like online role playing before I started writing a book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That. Oh boy. Yeah, I used to do a lot of that too. A lot of online role play and some of the video games I used to play. I'd be on the role play servers, making characters and
Mm,
engaging in all that. Yeah, aside from the fan fiction, and it helps that I also studied philosophy in college,
mm,
so
yeah.
bit of writing there.
Also,
But
also, yeah, a
yeah.
little bit. Yeah. I had this weird masters where you know how like literature often like crosses with philosophy at some point,
Yeah.
like because that kind of stuff. Yeah, I have a master's in North American literature and culture, which was pretty cool. I enjoyed it a lot. Read a lot of books I would otherwise wouldn't read. Didn't read a lot of books I should have read, and then wrote a paper about them anyway. The usual. But I really enjoyed the idea of like philosophy and thinking about thoughts that smarter people than me have already thought about. Which is also why I like postmodernism so much. It's a fun concept to think about, all these different like layers and all this kind of stuff. What was your focus in philosophy?
So I ended up actually focusing on ethics more so,
Mm-hmm.
just the different schools of ethics, you know, like utilitarianism versus deontology,
Mm-hmm.
some of the more classic philosophers like Kant, Immanuel Kant, Descartes,
Mm-hmm.
Aristotle,
Mm-hmm.
Socrates, just stuff like
Cool.
that. It was a bachelor's degree, so nothing too crazy, but, you
Oh,
know,
not bad, not bad.
majored
Have you
in it.
watched?
So.
Mhm.
No, I majored in philosophy, so
Oh,
that was
nice.
really the only thing.
Have you watched The Good Place?
Watch the what?
The Good Place.
I've heard about it. I actually haven't watched it. No.
You need to watch that.
Hmm.
You really do.
No,
It
no,
is.
definitely.
You're going to love it. Like I know, like with all the writing and everything, it's going to be hard, but you are going to love that show.
Hmm.
Like, it is. Yeah, I can't spoil too much, but you're going to love the show.
Oh yeah, no. A lot of people have recommended that to me, so it's
Yeah,
definitely on my to-do list.
yeah.
One of these days when I'm actually ahead on the schedule for once.
You will never be ahead of the schedule if you're releasing 20,000 words a week. I'm just telling you, bro.
You're not wrong. I'm
Yeah,
probably never gonna do it, but
yeah. But I mean, so this is like advice I got and that I also struggle to heed, but now really comes to like bite me in the ass, or came to bite me in the ass after a while. And that is, you do need to find a good schedule. And then like also you need to pace yourself. Because if you like, you've been writing from like February, so that's like 4 or 5 months.
yeah.
At your current pace, most people, I'm not saying you will, but most people at your current pace will hit a level of some sort of burnout in about 4 months. So just be careful about that. I don't want that to happen to you. Um, because like it does take something out of you to like write that much the entire time, and coupled with work, right? So yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I entirely agree, and I'm
Mm.
shameless. I have no problem telling my readers, "Hey, you're only getting one chapter a week from now on," because I just
Mm.
don't feel like it. So,
Yeah.
much as it would suck for them to hear, but at the end of the
Oh,
day, this for me is a
oh,
side
boo
project.
hoo.
Yeah,
Only 10,000 words a week.
yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous when you put it
Yeah.
like that, but
So as a marketing person or someone working in IT, it's all about how you frame it. You know, it's about like, I've decided to set a new goal for myself, and I'm going to be releasing 10,000 words each week now.
I like that. That's very
Yeah,
good. I
yeah.
love it.
There you go.
Love it.
It sounds big.
Oh yeah, no, that's great, man.
Yeah.
It sounds like what a politician would say, and I love that.
Now feeling dirty and insulted.
No, no, like wasn't intended that way, but no, that's
It's fine. It's fine. Um, I actually got this from Knickknacks. Like, they have like little like paprika covered peanuts here in Germany, like in a very like in a crust.
hmm,
They're like amazing. And they have like the big packs, right? They cost like €2.99 instead of €1 99.
hmm.
And they wrote on it like new size. Like, that sounds great. Except that now there's like less than like half of what they had in it.
Wow.
Not like less than half, but there's like definitely less in there. Like,
Hmm.
let's say like 25% less. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to write it like now, new, 25% less, right? That's like also not something you want to write about. But then you can just like, how about you just don't tell people? Like putting a star around the new size doesn't makes it sound very exciting until you realize you're being fucked over. Pardon my French. So yeah, but of course, like for all this, it's different.
Hey, no, hey, inflation hits hard sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
the being the bearer of bad news is never pleasant.
Pardon. I think you mean the bad news bear. You will get that reference once you watch The Good Place.
Mm,
You will. It's
mm.
good. Anyway, no, also I think on Railroad, the readers they're more humane than we might think. And I'm saying this as a joke. Because like we all have our people who like We're like, oh, what's that comment? I don't understand anything of what you just wrote. But it's English. I know that, but what's going on?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've had my share of commenters who definitely like to steer the story in one direction or will air a grievance in the comment section.
Mhm.
And I'm just like,
Mhm.
hey, for my own sake, I'm going to ignore that.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to let it play itself out, you know?
Which is why I love writing stories that no one reads. I don't have to deal with that shit.
Oh man, no, it's crazy because when I started the Stubborn Skill Grinder, I would have been
Mhm.
happy with just 100 followers and
Mhm.
1,000 views because it was just meant
Mhm.
to be a project for fun. And
Mhm.
in a sense, the exposure I got kind of forced me to take it more serious. You know,
Mhm.
in a sense, because there's definitely a marked, I want to say, difference in focus and quality in between chapters. I want to say 1 to 14, and then 14 onwards. Definitely, there's definitely some pickup. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
things suddenly got organized. And that's actually around the time in real life where I realized, oh, whoops, okay then. Guess people are reading this now. What do I do?
Like the record scratch, and then like, it was at this moment that he realized he fucked up.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. I know that feel. For me, it came out at the end of book one, and then I had to rewrite it, and then I re-released it, and then I had to rewrite it again. So yeah, that's it's good that you realize this in chapter 14. I'm really happy
Yeah,
for
no.
you.
Hey, I mean, again, thankfully I got that realization not too far
Mhm.
in. It would
Mhm.
have been awkward if I got it past the 200,000 word mark, because
Mhm.
that would have been a disaster.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit before, right? But what's your organization look like?
So when you say organization, you mean like how I'm plotting the story out, kind of deal, or?
You said you need to be no more organized. You realized that, so I was wondering
Oh
about that.
yeah, yeah. So definitely, and I'm sure everybody will see it, but for people who don't see it, I'd hope they don't. But yeah, no, chapters 1 to 14, there was definitely a lot more of, oh hey, I'm just going with this just because,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
wasn't as planned out, and obviously the whole big bones of the story was out there from
Mhm.
when I started writing, but some of the particulars I kind of just pulled out of my pants, if I'm being honest, in the early
Mhm.
chapters.
Mhm.
So that definitely, was something that it's a little apparent if you were to examine everything under a scope that, yeah,
Mhm.
chapters 1 to 14 are definitely a little more, whimsical, a little more off the pants.
Mhm.
Whereas moving forward from that point is when things really start to focus down, narrow down, and all that.
It is time. I've done it. I finally launched Genesis of the Sacred Machine, my own little book, in its definitive edition. So, if you want to, you can check it out right now on Railroad. There's a link below the video. Other than that, I really hope you're enjoying this podcast and I could use some of your support. Go check out our Patreon, or maybe just leave a like, a follow, or whatever it is on the platform that you're on. Anyway, thank you so much, and let's get on with the show. Well, this actually brings us to the next question, and that's, what's one thing that you've learned that you would do differently now that you've
uh,
gotten the experience?
yeah, so that's, again, going back to what I was talking about, I'll actually expand on it more now, is that,
Mhm.
keeping things focused and getting the organization done better. Like, to give an example, there was an early grinding scene in chapter 4 where he ends up fighting. The MC fights a whole bunch of people in a warehouse, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of skills gained there, which
Mhm.
aren't necessarily, tied in the way they should be to later parts of the story, because this was more of a pilot. This was
Mhm.
more by the pants, and if I'm to, and which I will be doing an edit for something for a publisher later on, some of that stuff's going to be modified a bit,
Mhm.
you know. So definitely, what I would do differently is, if I didn't realize it was going to get popular, probably would have done the organization and planning a little better.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Like doing the edits is a very good idea. You should probably do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. Um, I'm still thinking about like how would I organize something like this? How would I organize a time loop? And I think maybe that's a good enough question, right? We've
Hmm.
already talked about this in the Patreon content. Basically, how do you how do you plot that? Like how do you write a time loop story?
Oh boy, that's obviously, there's no, like, there are slice of life time loop stories. If we're talking
Mm,
on a broad scale, there are. There doesn't have to
mm,
be an imminent disaster in every time loop, but for the type of time loop that I'm writing, there is, and that's typically how most of these time loop stories go, is that here's a time loop, and here's a disaster which you're expected to mitigate with the time
mhm,
loop that we've given you.
mhm,
And that's really the bind, the pickle that the main
mhm,
character's in. It's MC versus situation or big
mhm,
mountain in front of them for a lot of
mhm,
these action focused loops. So that's kind of how you started off, or how I started off, I should say, is that here's this big problem, which is in chapter one, the ancient machine underneath the mountain.
mhm,
That's kind of how it starts. That's how this whole shebang begins. And
mhm,
from there, there's more problems, there's extenuating circumstances, and it's kind of tied into the character's progression as well. You have a time loop, and you have our character's attempts to beat the mountain that's before them through the
mhm,
usage of this device which they have, which is the time
mhm,
loop.
mhm,
So, I feel plotting it definitely comes along with focusing on big problem and
mhm,
focusing on the character's progression in solving that problem. And it's how those
mhm,
two kind of intertwine moving forward
mhm,
alongside all the other details that a time loop is
mhm,
basically formed.
mhm. Hmm. Okay, very interesting. Like I do feel though that there's something different about plotting a time loop than plotting like a quote unquote normal story, right?
True, definitely so. One of the big things I'd say is characterization and
Mm-hmm.
reverting character changes, because
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting. Because in a normal story, you'll have, hey, this person throughout the normal course of these chapters has had a character development.
Mm-hmm.
But when a loop restarts, they don't have that character development
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And there's some explorations to be made in that regard. Like, hey, I just went through this whole heart to heart conversation with, my
Mm-hmm.
mom, and we finally came to, understand one another and all of that. But hey, the time loop happened, and now guess what? She's back to being an alcoholic or whatever, or
Yeah.
back to, her old ways or something, just to give an
Yeah.
example. So there's definitely that skill too, is that you have to consider characters, their relationships, and their
Mm-hmm.
personalities and developments in the
Mm-hmm.
course of the time loop as well, and how that
Mm-hmm.
would affect the main character, because they have to see this person essentially revert and go
Mm-hmm.
back to a worse, maybe better form of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is hard. And like I mean, for the main character, it's great because like I mean, as an author, it's great for the main character because you can have emotional damage, which is just great. I think like this is actually one of the most important things that I like about these time loop stories is that transient feeling, is that kind of how can I have this all the time, even though everything resets. And there's something like philosophical about it in a way, because life kind of exists in loops in many different mythologies, which is fun.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, it also is just the fact that it's a time loop suggests that there can be a good end to it. I've recently skimmed over "It's About Time," so the summary of "It's About Time." It's a story where one guy, like every person in his family, can basically time travel, like time travel back into his own past and relive moments in his past and then change them. But doing that changes pretty much everything that comes after, and also changes like, for example, if you have like a daughter, suddenly it might be a son, right? So his dad can do it and he can do it, and no one else. And so first off, he like experiments around with it and finds out like, oh, this is bad. And then he basically his dad dies of cancer, and he goes back to live his life twice, like just like spend his time as much time with his dad as possible. And then later on, like in the end, he finds out like, hey, actually, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this anymore. Like living life twice kind of like makes the first time kind of worthless. So he just sticks with the one time and doesn't time travel again, which is, I don't know, it's a really good movie. It's very underrated.
Hmm.
But all these like, I like this like the ideas of time loop stories, even like Returnal, even though they had like a fucking depressing ending. So yeah, have you played Returnal?
No, actually, I haven't. No.
It's one of those PS5 exclusives.
Mm,
Like
more of an Xbox gamer myself, so.
yeah, I actually played it like on a friend's PS5 because I don't own one because I don't know, not paying scalpers to get a PS5, thank you.
Hmm.
But yeah, the basic gist of the plot is that spoilers, the main character has landed on this like time reversal planet because she kind of like wanted to revert some sort of guilt she had, and then it suggested that maybe the entire idea of her being like in a spaceship is just all in her head. So everything that she experiences might just be born out of the guilt and trauma of killing her own daughter in the car crash. Like it's very, very, very abstract and also a very good game. It's
Hmm.
a kind of like rogue like third person shooter, which doesn't exist all that much. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's unique. Might have to
yeah,
look up some of that.
yeah. I can recommend like a let's play too if you want to look at it. But yeah, all right. Speaking about like stuff that we enjoy, what's a book that you love and why is it awesome?
Oh boy, I could go on
Mm-hmm.
about this section for a while, and it's hard to narrow it down to one. But whew, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll
Sure, go
talk
ahead.
about the different genres and what I might like in each one, maybe. Because
I need to
obviously,
write all of them down because I need to put them all in the links. So let's go.
oh god, okay. Who obviously in time loops, I do love Mother of Learning.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty classic. In fact, it's one of the things I definitely drew inspiration from in keeping the beginning of the loop very, very consistent, and
Mm-hmm.
exploring outwards from there. I loved it. I loved how Zorian starts off in his bedroom with his little sister waking him up every single loop. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much to explore from there, and I love that. And but aside from time loops, if I were to talk about System Apocalypse, Randiddly Ghost Town, I saw you
Mm-hmm.
had Norret Flood on your
Mm-hmm.
podcast. He actually got me into the whole System Apocalypse genre. Love it. He was probably one of the first authors I read in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, I mean, aside from that, there's in terms of cultivation and Xianjia, there's Desolate Era, which is pretty good, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been translated, of course. It's not exactly written in English, but no, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely some of the books I like. But top pick, Mother of Learning, without a doubt.
I'm writing it down. Okay. Then the next one. So we got Janja, we got System Apocalypse, we got our time loops. What else?
I mean, there's obviously the classic progression fantasies too, like you got stuff that is like, oh, classic hero reincarnates or gets stronger, the beginning
Mm.
after the end, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff. I think they have a webtoon of that too now. I actually haven't been keeping up with that, but no, I remember
Yeah,
being
yeah.
one of the OG readers back when I think the first few chapters were like, a web novel. I was reading the beginning after the end. That was
Mm.
pretty good. And, obviously for taking Royal Road as a platform, I think one of the oldest progression fantasy stories on there is Forgotten Conqueror, which is unfortunately on hiatus and it's been
Mm.
abandoned. And I'm not saying it's as high quality as, a lot of the magnificent works that have come since, but it
Mm.
was a hallmark for when it came out like 9 years ago or so.
Mm. Jesus, yeah. That's a long
Yeah.
time.
Oh yeah, that's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Any traditional stuff that people might like?
Oh, I mean, aside from the classics like Lord of the Rings,
Yes.
or
Mm.
yeah, aside from that, I mean, yeah, I would say Lord of the Rings definitely.
Mm.
A lot of my world building is pretty classic. I don't like to deviate too much from the stereotypical elf, dwarf, orc kind of thing, but I like to keep it there, and then I like to expand outwards from there to keep
Mm,
things
mm,
simple. Because I feel
mm,
if you're not focusing like if your story focuses too much on world building, it has to start getting very detailed, and the
mm,
readers need to
mm,
have a
mm,
reason to focus on that. Whether it's done through the story, characters, or the
mm,
narrative. So I
mm.
like to keep my world building simple and classic as a result. So Lord of the Rings all day.
Lord of the Rings all day. Okay. Well, in that case, I mean, we got a few minutes left, so we can talk about anything else, right? I mean, usually I would go to shoutouts now, but we can't do that yet. I don't want to rob people of their time. What about you? Do you have any topics you really want to talk about? You were like, man, I should go to this podcast and talk about this topic.
Oh boy, I mean, aside from time loops and progression
Mm-hmm.
fantasy, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, obviously we've seen progression fantasy done not just in novel format, but stuff like you got solo leveling. That's
Mm-hmm.
Korean lit RPG. That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
strong stuff.
That's all as a light novel, right?
Yeah, yeah, it has a
Mm-hmm.
light novel, and it moved on to being a webtoon. So no, that's pretty good stuff. Hell, I'd say the Korean stuff is very strong actually.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to give another recommendation, one
Mm-hmm.
of the novels which I really liked, the Korean one, was Main Character Hides His Strength, and it's
Yeah.
just about a guy who wields a big war hammer and
Mm.
smacks things around with it, and he has 999 strength. So
Have you read Prophecy Approved Companion?
I've heard about that actually. I haven't
Mm.
gotten around to reading it, but I've heard about that.
Yeah, it's I enjoy sidekick stories or stories written from the perspective of a sidekick. So I really have to check it out still. I mean,
Hmm?
the Kyle Kieran podcast just came out like as we're recording this like a day ago, so I know what I'm doing like the next couple of days. But yeah, in the end, I really want to like broaden my horizons a little bit more again because I have been hustling a lot, as you say. So I kind of want to, yeah,
Yeah, no,
spend
for
more time
sure.
reading.
You
Mm.
deserve a break. Especially
Yes.
when you've been working hard. And it's
Yeah.
hard to keep up sometimes because I've had that too, where I'm
Mm.
just work, and then
Mm.
and oh, it's
Mm.
been 2 months and I haven't really gotten the chance to read something myself or watch
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Like just going to the gym might be a good idea again.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe I don't know, like I don't know where you live, but I'm gonna find out and be a streaker and like you can just like run after me and maybe like be like KO whatever, tell you
Oh
whatever.
god, I would hope not.
Okay, good. Well, in that case, I will abandon this like really harsh plan. So how about that? On?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
welcome.
fond of paperwork. It's the chase is the easy part, but having to write the report about it after is what gives me a
Yeah.
headache.
But then again, you write like 10,000 word reports
Oh
every day.
God, no. Oh God, no. My charge officers would kill me if I were to write
Yeah.
reports that long. But
It's just like very short. I mean, like it's a good exchange, right? Like you write a lot of words for the RPG and a very few words for your job, which is nice.
yeah,
Learn to be concise. No, there's one thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about. Like we've mentioned video games before, and that's there's cool time loop video games. Have you played the Sexy Brutal?
no, actually have not. Is that another PlayStation exclusive or?
No, it's I played it on PC, and it's like it's a very unknown game because of the title. Like the title sounds like really weird, but it's about a casino. It's about a time loop in a casino, or casino-like mansion, and I can highly recommend it. It's a very good puzzle game because you have to like know where each person is and then kind of prevent their death. It's it's really good.
Hmm.
Yeah, you should check it out if you have time. You don't have time, but maybe the listeners will. So we'll see.
Hey, might watch a Let's Play. I think so.
It's like on the couch and it like What do you do when you're done writing? Like, I mean, you said like you come home and then your writing schedule starts in the morning at like 8, and then you write, and
Oh
then you're to
yeah.
work.
Usually when I get home, it's just like I gotta sleep. I gotta eat and sleep. So
Yeah,
that's really all
yeah,
I can do. But
yeah.
hey, in the rare amounts of free time that I get, might crack away on a laptop while watching something. So
Mm, yeah.
usually it's write, eat, work, sleep. That's how it's been lately.
How can like okay, we talked about this before, but how can you sustain that for so long? You know it's not going to work.
Probably not, but while that train's going on for now, I think it's good. Plus,
Mm,
I'll be the bearer of bad news to the readership later on, saying, "Hey, we're downgrading to 10,000 a week." So,
yeah. Again, we talked about this. We are establishing a new schedule where it's 10,000 words a week.
yes, yes, true. Not downgrade. New plan of action. Exactly.
Exactly. Yes. 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 We have exciting news from now on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that wording.
Yeah.
Very
There you
nice.
go. Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, I think it's time for us to bring the podcast to a close. No, wait. I almost forgot the shout outs. Let's go. Do the shout outs.
Oh, awesome. Hey, I mean, a good friend of mine on Royal Road released a
Mm.
story recently. It's the 3001 Paths to Death, a light lit
Ooh, okay.
RPG looper, another time loop story.
Nice.
And, I like him. He's a great guy. He has another fic going on already. The
Mm.
Goodman 99, that's the author.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
it's a great cultivation time loop story. So,
Ooh,
people would be
nice.
interested. It's great. It's got a
Mm.
melee focused MC as well, so people might
Mm.
like that.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Another one.
And yeah, one more I've got for sure is
Mm.
The Industrial Mage, modernizing a
Ooh,
magical world.
okay.
And it's great. It's kingdom building and it's
Mm.
also progression fantasy. The
Mm.
author is
Mm.
Nectar, who's another friend of
Mm.
mine. So I think both those are pretty good.
Mm.
I especially recommend Industrial Mage, Modernizing a Magical World, because
Mm.
there's an uplifting of technology too. You have
Yeah,
an engineer coming in from another world who's gonna help the kingdoms rise up by bringing modern technology around
I
and
love
fusing
uplift
it with magic.
stories.
Yeah, no, it's great. Kingdom
Yeah.
building is great stuff, honestly. And I could go off on a whole other tangent about it, but I'll spare you.
It no, I think that's fine. Like one of the issues I have with tech uplift is always as though these tech people are like the first people who like thought of that. So you have to like have a good reason why it doesn't work. I mean, by the time this podcast comes out, the story is going to be like a couple months old already. But I would like to shout out my friend Saving Throw, and they finally, after more than a year of writing and thinking about it and like doing stuff, they finally released. So when am I going to be a hero? So when am I a hero? Sorry, that's the name of the thing.
Ooh.
Uh, so when am I a hero? It is a very, 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 very good system apocalypse that
Mm,
you can check out. I help with the cover,
love it.
um, and it's yeah. If you ever wondered about what would happen if you got caught in the system apocalypse wearing like while you were hungover and just really got like the idea of like I'm depressed, I want to go to the store and I just want to buy some ice cream, and then the system apocalypse happens. Yeah, that's a story for you.
Love it.
It's yeah.
Love it. That's actually great, and I feel all great system apocalypses start with that kind of premise. Like I remember
Mm.
Randiddly starting the same way, and if your
Yeah,
friend's starting off that way, hey, that I can only recommend it, and I might even give it a look at.
yeah. Rand Italy like, started like kind of the same, right? They he was
Yeah,
like in this underground walkway,
yeah, that's
uh,
right. He was on campus, and he just
because his friends had just broken up or like they were in a fight or something.
hmm
Uh, and yeah, and now it's finished. Did you know that?
yeah, I heard that's crazy. Like I stopped reading around chapter 2100 just to let the things build up a bit, but I
A
might just
little
pick
bit.
just a little bit. Oh man, no, that story's great. Definitely a
Mm.
genre-defining system apocalypse for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't know where you get the name from, you can listen to the episode of Norrid Flood talking about it. So there you
Damn,
go.
all right. I'm definitely gonna give that a look.
He's such a Chad. Like his new fiction is out too right now, and that's doing pretty well. And he just was like, I'm gonna keep writing that. The followers will come. And I don't think he even like organized any shout outs or anything. Just like released it and just like went on with it. Man, he's such a Chad. I have no idea how he does it. Anyway,
Yeah, no, he's a great guy for sure.
yeah. So thank you very much for being here for the main stuff. Any
Oh,
last
thank you for
words?
having me. Hey, thanks for having me. Last
Hmm.
words. Just if you're an author, keep stubbornly grinding away. You
If
know,
you're a reader, read about people stubbornly grinding away in time loops.
yeah, that's it.
Hmm.
Hey,
Okay.
well,
Well, thank you everyone for listening and watching. If you want to support the show, you can check out Patreon. But if you don't want to support me on Patreon, that's also fine. I just love having you here. You can leave a like, you can leave a follow, whatever you want. All right. With that being said, again, thanks everyone for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on.